Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Hope you guys have a great Martin Luther King holiday. So let's see, last weekend we have two wide releases and they are Bad Boys for Life and Dolittle. Let's see how those movies did at the box office. Alright, so let's jump right in. Coming in at number 1 is Bad Boys for Life. This is the, I think Bad Boys 3, the third Bad Boys movie, starring Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. It knocked 1917 off the top spot, opening to a 3-day figure of 62.2 million, which is great. I say this movie would probably open somewhere between 20 to 25 million because of the long years between sequels. You know, Bad Boys 2 was back in 2003, and Will Smith is not exactly at the top of his game right now. His movies, his movies haven't been pulling in huge numbers for, a number of years now. And for Bad Boys for Life, I thought, Michael Bay wasn't here, but this is a reunion movie, so 20 to 25 for Bad Boys for Life, and lo and behold, it did way better than that. Budget is 90 million, and right now reviews is actually surprisingly good, 75% on the tomato meter and a cinema score. When the Thursday numbers were in, it pulled in a 6.4 around there, and Sony was projecting like a lowish figure before that, 38 million, and they raised it up to 50 to 60 million. All right, let's see. So far right now, domestic gross is about 73.4 million, and it pulled in an additional 38.6 million overseas for a worldwide total of 112 million. So it looks like with the good reviews and good word of mouth, I expect this movie to stay in theater for a while. Alright, let's move on to number 2, which is the World War I movies, 1917, directed by Sam Mendes. In its fourth weekend, it pulled in about 22 million. Remember, it only expanded wide last weekend. And this is pretty much second weekend in wide release, and it pulled in 22 million, which is actually still pretty good. So domestic gross so far is about 81.4 million, and overseas it pulled in an additional 61.9 million for a worldwide total of 143 million. 1917 is the movie to beat at the Oscars this year, right? It won the Golden Globes, it won numerous other awards. It's well reviewed at 90% on the tomato meter and an A- cinema score. So this movie is getting its award bump, and expect this movie to stay in theaters for a while as well. Alright, let's move on to number 3, which is Dolittle, the other new release last weekend. It is kind of, I guess, a reimagination or a reboot of the Dr. Dolittle, movies about a scientist who could speak to animals. And this took place in the 1800s, starring Robert Downey Jr. as said doctor, right? It also features the voices of Antonio Banderas, Michael Sheen, James Broadbent, John Cena, Octavia Spencer, and others. Poorly reviewed, 18% on the tomato meter, but B cinema score. So I guess the audience, target toward the little ones liked it. This is a movie that they could probably open to somewhere 25 to 30 million, and it opened a bit lower, about 22 million over the 3-day weekend. Did better than I expected over considering the bad reviews, but then again, this is a family film, and family friendly films, especially with Robert Downey Jr., tend to have some pull. So yeah, even though it did not do as well as my projection, it did pull in about 22 million, which is decent, except that this movie cost 175 million to make, and the poor reviews probably will not do it any favors in the coming weeks, suggesting that the word of mouth might not be there. This movie might not have that much legs. So domestic gross so far is about 30 million. I pulled in an additional 27.3 million overseas for a worldwide total of 57 million. Remember, the budget is 175 million, so it has ways to go to break even. Alright, let's move on to number 4, which is pretty much the direct competition to Dolittle. Is Jumanji: The Next Level. In its 6th weekend, this Dwayne Johnson movie pulled in about 9.7 million, a drop off of about 31% from the previous weekend. Let's see the domestic gross so far is 273.7 million, and additional 438 million overseas for a worldwide total of 712 million. So it's doing pretty well. well to Jumanji level. You know, we're going to see more Jumanji movies coming along. The budget for this movie is 125 million, and it's pulling 712 million worldwide and counting. So yeah, nothing more to say here. All right, let's move on to number 5, which is Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. It is the final movie, I guess, in this, Episode 9, final movie in this latest trilogy. In its 5th weekend, it pulled in 8.3 million, drop off about 45%. Let's see, domestic gross so far is 494 million, and additional 534 million overseas for a worldwide total about about 1 billion. I mean, it might not catch up to The Last Jedi's 1.3 billion, but hey, it's still doing pretty well. All right, number 6 is A Little Woman. It's the movie that could, right? It's adapted from Louisa May Alcott's novel of the same name, stars Saoirse Ronan, Emma Watson, Florence Pugh, Eliza Scanlen, and others. In its 4th weekend, it pulled in about 6.4 million. Drop off is relatively low, about 19% from the previous weekend. Domestic growth so far is about 87 million, additional 44 million overseas for a worldwide total of 131 million. Budget is 40 million. So yeah, this movie is actually doing pretty good. All right, number 7 is Just Mercy. It is a drama starring Michael B. Jordan, Jamie Foxx, and Brie Larson about a Harvard graduate who went to Alabama after graduation to fight for death row inmates. Let's see, in its 4th weekend, it expanded. This is 2nd week in expansion. It pulled in about 5.8 million in its 2nd week in expansion. And let's see, domestic growth so far is about 21 million, and overseas, it hasn't opened that wide overseas yet, but I wouldn't expect this movie to do that well overseas. 1.3 million overseas for a worldwide total about 22.4 million. The reviews are good for this movie, 83% on Rotten Tomatoes and A+ cinema score. All right, number 8 is Knives Out. It's experiencing a resurgence. It was number 9 last weekend. Now it moved up a spot. So in its 8th weekend, it pulled in about 4.3 million. And let's see, drop off of about 23% from the previous weekend. And domestic gross is about 147 million, and additional 131 million overseas for a worldwide total of 278 million, which is pretty good for a movie that only costs 40 million to make. And as you know, they greenlit the sequel, Knives Out 2, so look for that sometimes down the road. All right, number 9 is Like a Boss, the comedy. It dropped off huge in the 2nd weekend. It pulled in about 4 million, drop off of about 60% from its opening weekend. Domestic growth so far is about 18 million, 1 million overseas for a worldwide total of about 19 million. The budget for this movie is 29 million. So this comedy is not doing that well here. I mean, reviews are terrible, 19% on the tomato meter and a B cinema score. And as you know, with comedies, don't expect the overseas market to help this out any bit, because comedies don't usually travel well overseas, and it looks like this is gonna be a money loser for Paramount. All right, let's close out the top 10 with Frozen 2. It pulled in about 3.9 million in its 9th weekend, and let's see, domestic growth so far is 466 million, and additional 936 million overseas for a worldwide total of 1.4 billion. Amazing sequel, right? The first movie came out of nowhere, was an original property. It still grossed 1.2 billion worldwide, right? And the sequel surpassed it with 1.4 billion worldwide. Of course, Disney, they are going to make sequel off this one as well. All right, so that's it for the box office top 10. Let's move on to the new releases this weekend. So we're going to have 2, Guy Ritchie's The Gentleman and the horror movie The Turning. All right, let's start off with The Gentleman. It is directed by Guy Ritchie, starring Matthew McConaughey, Charlie Hunnam, Michelle Dockery, Colin Farrell, Henry Golding, Hugh Grant. So, this movie is more like a throwback Guy Ritchie film, like Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, and, his previous movies before he started doing these big blockbusters. So The Gentleman is kind of like that. Currently it's 76% on the tomato meter right now, and I don't see this one doing as well as his bigger movies. I see this one as more in line with his smaller films before before the blockbusters, with all the accents and all, in this one. It is anchored by Matthew McConaughey, Colin Farrell as well, but still this is a decidedly Guy Ritchie film, not one for mass consumption. As such, I think this movie will probably have an opening somewhere in the 10 million, or lower, right? 8 to 10 million this weekend. All right, let's move on to the horror movie The Turning. It is based on Henry James's novella The Turn of the Screw. It's pretty much a haunted house movie, right? Two siblings, new caretaker, and ghosts. It's directed by Flora Sigibondi, I believe. I think that's how it's pronounced, right? She directed a lot of music videos, and then the movie The Runaway, starring who? Oh yeah, Kristen Stewart. Yeah, starring Kristen Stewart. So yeah, again, I don't have high hopes for this movie as well. It is a horror movie. It's not anchored by any names, but then again, you don't need names for horror movies. They could do spectacularly well, without any names. You just need a concept that horror audience can attach to. Is this the one? Who knows? So I think The Turning will probably land somewhere in the 5 to 8 million in opening this weekend. All right, so that's it for this week's podcast. Tune in next time to see how I did. Until then, take care. Bye bye.